Summary of the Demon Lover by Elizabeth Bowen. During the Second World War, it is late August, and Kathleen Drover has gone back to her home in London. She has come to get things to bring back to her family, who are currently living in the country to avoid bombs in the city. Inside, Mrs. Drover can't believe how bad the house has gotten and how strange it feels to be in a place she used to know well. As she goes upstairs, she sees a letter on the hall table that is written to her. She doesn't understand why the letter is there and is annoyed by it. She makes a list of the reasons why it doesn't make sense. In the letter, the sender tells Mrs. Drover that today is our anniversary and that they will meet at the time we've set. Mrs. Drover looks clearly upset and goes to the mirror to look at herself, probably to calm down. She then tries to forget about the letter and how it made her feel by putting her attention on the chest and its contents. But these tries don't work. As the clock starts to chime the hour, Mrs. Drover starts to wonder if this is the hour the letter is talking about. During the next intense flashback, the reader sees Mrs. Drover as a young girl in the yard of her family's house during the First World War. She is with a guy who is older than her, and the reader figures out that this is her ex-fiancé, who is home from fighting in France. A key part of the flashback is that Mrs. Drover wants to leave her fiancé and run back home to her mother and sister, who are safe there. The reader also finds out that Mrs. Drover acted well when her fiancé went missing and was thought to be dead, but that she had trouble getting involved with other men and felt cut off from everything for a while after that. Back in the present, Mrs. Drover has made some scary assumptions about the letter based on how it looks. For example, she thinks it was sent by her ex-boyfriend, who thinks she promised to meet him at her house today. So, the house is now an instant threat, she is stuck inside, and her old boyfriend is probably getting closer and closer. From this point on in the story, Mrs. Drover is completely focused on getting away, but she can't do it because she can't keep her mind on the present. She finally decides to leave the house and find a cab whose driver can go back with her to help her get her things. She goes to the top of the stairs and feels a breeze coming up from the basement, as if someone just left the house from there. This makes her feel more confident, so she decides to leave the house herself. Mrs. Drover goes outside and walks to the taxi stand. When the clock hits 7, she gets into a taxi. For a short time, she thinks she is safe. But she quickly changes her mind when she realizes that the driver has already started driving without her telling him where she wants to go. She tries to get his attention, so he stops the car quickly and turns around to face her. Mrs. Drover's frightened reaction when she saw his face suggests that she recognizes him as her ex-fiancé, possibly because of a supernatural force. The reader realizes that she is in danger again, which is even more shocking because she thought she was safe at last. The story ends with a dramatic scene of Mrs. Drover screaming and beating on the cab windows as she is taken away into the empty streets of London.
About the author. Elizabeth Bowen was born in Ireland in 1899. In 1907, her family moved to England, where she went to school. She went back and forth between Ireland and England a lot during the First and Second World Wars. Bowen was deeply affected by the wars, and you can see that in her writing. Her first book, Encounters, was a collection of short stories that came out in 1923. The House in Paris, 1935, and The Death of the Heart, 1938, are two of her best-known books. In 1930, she got Bowen's Court, an Irish country house, as a gift. Even though she mostly stayed in England, other writers like Virginia Woolf, Eudora Welty, Carson McCullers, and Iris Murdoch came to see her. In the 1940s and 1950s, she had to make money, so she wrote a lot of pieces, reviews, and travelogues. In February 1973, she died in London of lung cancer.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.